So Michael, that finally leads me to my question that I've been wanting to ask you this whole time. I don't know if you get this question all the time or if you've never gotten it before. But as I looked at it, my main question was, why didn't you guys shoot them?
Yeah, I mean, I have gotten that question, but I appreciate you asking it. There are very specific policies and protocols that dictate the way police officers in America can use force against other Americans. And appropriately so. And the policy, what it says is that a police officer may use deadly force when they believe that their life or the life of another individual is in jeopardy. That being said, you are accountable for every round that you fire from your weapon. And in a situation where you have individuals who are in such close proximity, I may identify, as I did when I was out in the crowd, individuals who I believed pose a deadly threat to me. And then I was authorized to use deadly force against them. That being said, had I drawn my weapon, it was most likely that it would have been stripped away from me, probably used against me. And if I did get off several rounds, even aiming at my intended target, who's to say that I wouldn't hit another individual? And while you say that, yes, they were part of an insurrectionist mob, it still doesn't mean that each and every one of them posed a deadly threat to me or to other officers. They may have been guilty of committing crimes, but they wouldn't have been guilty of committing crimes that would have risen to the level of having deadly force used against them. We don't have, go ahead.
Yeah, so Michael, look, I generally agree with most of the things that you say. I've seen you on TV, and obviously we've gone through this interview, but I'm not as pro cop as you are. You've been a cop, for over 2 decades, and I've seen a lot of police abuse that we cover. And so let me challenge you on what you're saying. I find it inconceivable that if those folks were black or Muslim, that you guys wouldn't have shot. Man, they nearly killed you. You had a heart attack. They attacked you. They grabbed at your gun. They tased your neck over and over again. You're telling me that in other circumstances where it wasn't white right-wingers, you guys wouldn't have shot the living crap out of those guys? I don't believe that for a second.
I mean, all I can tell you is, what my experience was that day. And my experience that day, politics played nothing in the way that I used force, as it has throughout my 20-year career in law enforcement. At no point in time did I ever take into consideration the race or political creed of the individuals that I was encountering. I mean, unfortunately, there are many instances of police misconduct. I would never say that law enforcement is above reproach or not in need of reform. But I categorically disagree with you in your assessment of what happened on January 6th. I think that the officers that responded there that day used incredible restraint and acted professionally and did the profession a huge service in showing what and how law enforcement officers should engage with American citizens.
So Michael, let me clarify. So I'm not saying that I don't believe you in how you would have acted, right? And my God, you nearly died. So if you had to prove that you had restraint, check, you proved it, okay? And I'm not saying that the cops overall that day didn't show restraint. They showed incredible restraint. No, that's a right-wing talking point, that you guys weren't restrained enough as they were kicking the crap out of you guys and nearly killing you, right? I don't believe that at all. I think it was the most amazing restraint I've ever seen from American law enforcement. But Michael, we see it on tape all the time, dozens and dozens, hundreds and hundreds of videos. I mean, a black guy pulls out a phone, he's dead. He doesn't even have a phone. He tells a cop he's got a legal gun, he's dead. He's got $20 that he's getting investigated on, he's dead. You tell me you had 15, 20,000, and you pick a minority, the Muslims storming the Capitol, and nearly killing the cops, and sometimes actually killing the cops, that they wouldn't have fired into the crowd. Can you see why I'd be skeptical about that?
I understand why people are skeptical of law enforcement actions, especially in the United States of America. That being said, I obviously have a different perspective on some of these incidents than probably you would have, and I'm coming into it as a career law enforcement officer. You take Derek Chauvin and George Floyd, and I'm quite certain that your first conclusion that you would draw is that Derek Chauvin was a racist. I don't know if Derek Chauvin was a racist, but I do know that when Derek Chauvin interacted with George Floyd, he had lost sight of the humanity of George Floyd. He didn't treat him like a human being, he treated him like an animal. And that is a pitfall that many law enforcement officers fall into throughout their careers. This is a profession that places human beings in contact with other human beings when they are at their worst. And we see it day in and day out. And there is no mechanism currently in law enforcement to address that. And I think that that's a problem. If you read through my book, that's one of the issues that I try to tackle is, how is it that we can address this, what I see as an officer wellness issue when it comes to police officers losing sight of the humanity of the individuals that they're charged with protecting. And also reminding those officers that their job is to protect the people that they are serving. We are not an occupying military force.
But Michael, so last thing here, that gets to why I asked the question, because you had to write that in your book, because oftentimes police in America do act like an occupying force. And so you might not have shot. And by the way, 80% of the cops there might not have shot if it was black folks or Muslim folks or whoever else it might be, right? But there's Chauvins in the crowd, right? In the among the police. And so I've always said it's the training. It's the training. We always tell the cops your lives are more important than other people's. Better to be judged by 12 than carried out by 6. Every cop in the country's probably heard that dozens of times, right? And so in a situation where your guys' lives were actually on the line, maybe it's just subconscious, but if that crowd looked different, it is near impossible for me to believe that at least a couple of the hundreds of officers there wouldn't have started shooting into the crowd. And in a sense, I feel like the right wingers have no idea how good they have it. I mean, like not getting shot in that situation, to me, was white privilege defined.
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking me if there's racist cops, yes, there are racist cops. Law enforcement is a microcosm of society. There's racist people in American society. There's racist people all over the world, and that's just a reality. Do I know if there's actually a way to rid law enforcement of that? I don't know. That being said, I was also a police officer throughout the IMF protests in Washington D.C. and the BLM protests, and I also saw examples of law enforcement officers acting with immense restraint in the face of pretty extreme levels of violence. And so I would just have to disagree with you. Are there incidences? Absolutely. But do I think that overall that racial profiling or racism is the problem? I would go back to what you just said, which is training. Training is a huge issue within law enforcement, and that's what needs to be addressed.
Yeah, no, we definitely disagree on some parts. I wasn't on the ground, but the IMF protests and the Black Lives Matter protests were nowhere near as violent as the January 6th ones, especially towards cops. I mean, they tried to shred you guys on January 6th, and like I said, they nearly killed a couple of you. And so on the other hand, we definitely agree it's the training. And we have to teach cops, these are citizens, you're supposed to protect and to serve. And yes, you're supposed to do as you did, Michael, on January 6th. Take a little bit of risk with your life to make sure citizens don't get killed. You wound up taking extraordinary risk. And I don't want you to misinterpret what I'm saying. I not only appreciate your service on that day, but you had tremendous valor for not shooting. I don't want people, cops shooting into white protesters or right-wing protesters. That's nuts, right? I just want the same treatment for African Americans and everyone else in the country. So if people read Hold the Line and they get that out of your book, great. Or if they get it from your example, great. But the entire country, in a lot of ways, wishes there were more restraint, like we saw on January 6th. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I mean, what I tell officers, or what I told officers that I worked with, was just because you can shoot, just because you are justified to shoot, doesn't mean that you have to shoot.
Yes, that's exactly right. And you definitely proved it, because you had every right to shoot and you didn't. All right, Michael Fanone, his book is Hold the Line. Everybody check it out. Thanks for joining us, appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.